Hello, everybody. Thank you, Dolores, for that introduction. Yes, this is Successfully Flipping Class, the Physics Classroom. I'm Jonathan Thomas Palmer, Flipping Physics. You can see my Twitter handle there and my email address, and this is the American Association of Physics Teachers. And I'm going to do my best to teach you about how to flip your physics classroom. So, as Dolores talked about, I've been teaching physics for roughly 17 years. I taught general physics, college prep physics, AP Physics B, AP Physics C, mechanics, and electricity and magnetism. The college prep physics course that I taught for 13 years was essentially AP Physics 1 before AP Physics 1 was a course. And since roughly 2013, I've been making free physics educational videos via Flipping Physics. And they're specifically designed both for me to use to flip my classroom and for you to use to flip your classrooms. That is why I make the videos. I make the videos specifically for you. I am really excited to be talking to physics teachers about flipping physics classrooms. Just to give you a basic idea of what it is that I do, I'm just going to do a quick share here of all of these are some screenshots. So in Flipping Physics, I play four different characters. I play Mr. P, the teacher. I play Billy, Bobby, and Bo, three students with each their own individual personalities. And the whole idea here is to create an environment where it's actually more like a classroom, where questions are asked and answered, and there are mistakes made, which is one of my favorite parts of it, and there are arguments, and I really enjoy creating that physics classroom in YouTube. And I try to make everything as real as possible, so I do my best to demonstrate whenever I can. Here, I'm doing a demonstration showing the impact force and impulse when dropping a racquetball from the same height above water, soil, and wood. And then I have an example where I do neutral, stable, and unstable equilibrium. And you can see this is basically I'm doing my best to demonstrate as many of the items as I can as I make the videos. So that's just some basic idea. Here I dropped a ball from a moving car and had it land in a bucket. So that's just a little bit of the basics of what I do with Flipping Physics. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint now, which is there. Okay. So one of the things that I want to do is I want to take an opportunity to find you. And I'm going to do this in a slightly different way, rather than if you've ever been in a webinar where they have you, pinpoint yourself on a map or something like that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link in the chat. And my request is that once that link is in the chat, that you click on the link. It'll open up a browser with a few instructions right there. So follow the instructions. There's a little Google form for you to fill out. And then we're going to have you come right back here. The instructions will be right there. So it should be in the chat now. So if you could, nope, I just sent it. Hold up. There we go. Okay, so the link should be in the chat. If you could take a moment, click on the link, go to the website, and I'll see you back here in just a few moments. Let's do the time. I'm bummed you guys can't see the chat because there's some entertaining things in there. Okay, so I'm going to get back to it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share with you my Google statistics, hopefully. So here we go. All right, so this is a screen capture of all of the people that are visiting this particular website right now, that one particular web page. And you can see I've got somebody from Singapore. Thank you very much. I have no idea what time it is. Oh, you're welcome back. You're fine. So Canada, thank you. Singapore, I am amazed that you're here. I wonder what time it is. United States, let's take a look at what we have from United States. So 60 people in the United States. You could see this is where everybody's located in the United States. Interesting. The lower part of the United States is represented on the map more. We've got 4 from San Antonio, 2 from Los Angeles, 2 from Pittsburgh, Tucson. I don't know where some of these places are, but this is awesome. It is so great to have all of you here with me today. And as I mentioned on that web page, realize that I will be posting a screen capture of this, and I'll try to answer whatever questions I might have missed in that on that particular page. And I'll post the PowerPoint presentation and links and whatever I can there. Okay, so let's get back to the PowerPoint presentation. Just a minute, the sharing takes a few moments. All right. All right, so I found you on planet Earth. So just a few norms here. We are all here to learn about flipping education. We're here to be supportive of one another and to ask questions. The tool I've given for that is the chat. I'm here to answer questions. If you have a question that you can answer, put it in the chat as well. Give suggestions, again, the chat, and whatever you do, please be involved. As I said, the last thing I want to do is just answer everything that I think you want to know. I want you to tell me what you want to know as well. So just as an outline of what we're going to do, we're going to define flipping. We're going to talk about the difference between traditional and flipped education. I'm going to talk about why you should flip. I'm going to talk about a specific tool I use for flipping my classes, which is EDpuzzle. And we're going to talk through my flipped learning suggestions, and of course, time for questions and comments and suggestions throughout. So please, I'm monitoring the chat here. I understand that so you guys are not seeing the chat, and you can only chat with all participants, but just please put it in the chat, and I will be able to see it. Okay, so the Flipped Learning Network defines flipped learning as a pedagogical approach in which direct instruction moves from the group learning space to the individual learning space. So that means that the direct instruction, the lecture, moves from the group learning space, the classroom, to the individual learning space, which is generally at home. And that is the basic idea behind flipped learning. But the idea is that it then transforms the group space into a dynamic, more integrated learning environment where the educator is a guider as the students apply the concepts and engage creatively in the subject matter. That's the basic idea behind flipped learning. And it's important to realize that a flipped classroom is just one component of flipped learning. Flipping a classroom is not interchangeable with flipped learning. So flipping a classroom is what I'm going to talk about today, and flipped learning is what happens to the classroom after you have flipped your classroom, because there are a lot of changes that happen. And we'll talk about that as we get farther into this. Okay, the chat box is interfering. Okay, interesting. Is it interfering now? I don't see it interfering at the moment. So let's see. I'll try to monitor what it says. Thank you for pointing out that the chat box was having an issue. Thank you. So more about flipped learning. So this is again from the Flipped Learning Network. It involves a flexible environment, learning culture, intentional content, and professional educator. There's even a checklist of 11 indicators that educator must include in their practice. And this is all. And I'll give this this link on my webpage afterwards. And I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I thought I would just give a brief introduction of what the definition of flipped learning is. You can delve more into that if you want to. I want to get into more in the nuts and bolts of how to do it. Okay, so now I have the question, why flip? And the question is, did you do your video homework? So we're going to go and we're going to take a look. I actually haven't looked at your answers to this, so give me a moment. We're going to switch to Safari, and we will be able to see that you can see here that, okay, 40% of you did the homework. 40% of you did the homework, and that leaves roughly 60% of you which did not do the homework. Thank you, some of you, for telling me that you were negligent, and I do understand that roughly 45% of you didn't realize there was homework. Well, but this is a flipped learning webinar, so I decided to flip a little bit of it. You're welcome. Yeah, okay. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to get back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so this brings up the moment where we get to talk about, I'll get back to the difference between traditional and flipped in a moment, but what if students don't do their homework? Because 60% of you did not do the homework. And this is a question I get all the time. And so I ask you, what do you do if students don't do their homework? Because really, it's not like this is any different. Students don't do their homework in a traditional classroom either. So I give one option, which is do not give them time in class to do it. And truth is that that's the only option that I have. I mean, I don't consider it an option to give them time in class to do it, and I don't consider it an option to do their homework for them. Really, you should not do this. Really, you should not teach the students what they missed. You should not take the time to do that in class. Just so to give one example of how I've dealt with this. So the very first day, and this is the first time I've done this, the very first day of school this year, I had the laptops and I had the students create an EDpuzzle account, which we'll get to in a little bit, and I assigned homework for the very next day. And the next day, roughly 2/3 of the students had done their homework and 1/3 of the students had not done their homework. So I graded the homework, and roughly 1/3 of my students were failing my class the second day of class. So I told all my students that day that I was emailing all of their parents and letting them know that they were currently failing my class because they were unable to watch videos as homework. And that was actually a very effective way to do it. So really, I suggest that you get started very early with making sure you alert the parents and you start failing kids for not doing their homework. And it was very effective, and students really turned around and started doing their homework because I let all their parents know that they were failing. Just so you know. All right, so I do want to get back to this question. So you did your homework, you watched it. So in the chat, could you just use 1 or 2 words to describe what you saw and heard in the traditional classroom? So just in the traditional classroom, if you could tell me what you saw and heard. I'll talk about, so somebody asked, how did you check to see if they had done the homework? I will talk about how specifically I did that, just so you know. I'll get to that in a little bit. Thank you for asking. So please, in the chat, just give me 1 or 2 words to describe what you saw and heard. Yeah, lots of stuff on the board. Dry, blah, 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 teacher talking, blah, 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 and me. Teacher driven, me talking, students not speaking, a very full whiteboard, students listening, taking notes, teacher just buzzing across the board, teacher centered, no student involvement, back of teacher's head. Oh, sorry. Lots of equations. Demo up front, teacher up front, hard to see, students sitting, doing Lenz's law. Yeah, it was Lenz's law. Okay, so let's stop. We got plenty in there. Somebody put students board. I'm not going to disagree with that. Okay, so now I just thank you for, okay. So I do want to talk about, now just take a moment and describe what you saw in the flipped classroom. Please, just 1 or 2 words. Now we're talking about the flipped classroom. Engaged students, collaboration, students hand-on, interactivity, student-centered learning. Okay, students asking questions, excellent questions. Students talking, students engaged, students standing and working together, collaboration, small group instruction, explanation of concepts, students happy. I love that. Really liked it. Application, relaxed atmosphere, students working, students having fun. Okay, let's stop with that. That's awesome. So that should give you just a microcosm of the differences between traditional and flipped and why I will never go back to a traditional classroom. All right, so now, one of the questions I always get from teachers is, I want to make my own videos. How do I make my own videos? So I'm going to say, before you make your own videos, please realize there's all sorts of free online content resources. There are a whole bunch are listed here. I'm not going to walk my way through all of them, but these are all resources that are just, they aggregate all sorts of educational content, and you should use those. In addition to that, this is a physics, we're talking about physics, so there are all sorts of free physics YouTube channels. There are people, look, the first one, Flipping Physics. There are all sorts of people who are as crazy as me who have decided that they want to help you teach your class and provide you with free videos that you can use. Bozeman Science, A+ Physics, We Are Showboat, all sorts of different ones. So please, I suggest that you do not make your own videos to begin with. Instead, you use other people's videos, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay. Yes, students complain about what about non-AP? Okay, so give me just a second. So what is students complain that yeah, Khan Academy is boring. I agree, which is why I make my videos, and that's what I have to say. What about non-AP level physics? I make a lot of my videos. I have videos that are at the non-AP level and then at the AP level. Okay, so do I still use a textbook? The answer is no. I do not use a textbook. Great. Okay. I want to move on because I think we feel free to ask questions throughout. Have you had students make video segments? I have had students make video segments. I have not used them, but I use it as a tool for their learning. I've not used WebAssign. I'll talk about EDpuzzle in just a little bit. Okay, let's move on. So here we are. EDpuzzle is a way to make any video your lesson. According to techlearning.com, EDpuzzle is a site that allows users to select a video and customize it by editing, cropping, recording audio, and adding questions to make an engaging presentation or lesson. And I'm going to talk you through exactly. Okay, so Angie's asking about using EDpuzzle and maybe Zaption or PlayPosit. So good point. So EDpuzzle, PlayPosit, and Zaption were three options. Unfortunately, about a year ago, Zaption shut down. So there's really only two options, and they are both free: EDpuzzle and PlayPosit. Now, I will tell you that I really fought using any one of these tools as a way to assign videos to students. I fought it until last year. Actually, last year was the first year that I used it, and you have to use either EDpuzzle or PlayPosit. I use EDpuzzle. They're both great. So I'm going to present about EDpuzzle today, and I'm going to walk my way through exactly how I use it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change my screen share. Sorry, it's very strange to be by myself presenting to all of you. I know how you feel. I've been there. Okay, where is Safari? Okay. Okay, so EDpuzzle. So I think I have to move this guy. Boop, ba-doop. Haha. Okay. In EDpuzzle, there is all sorts of EDpuzzle lessons. And you can use YouTube videos, you can use Vimeo, you can even upload your own videos so you can create a screen capture or something of that nature. So again, but I don't suggest that you do that. What I suggest is that you use other people's videos first, and then you can fill in the gaps with your own videos after you've learned what you like from other people's videos. Okay, so let's say you want a video about calculating the force of impact. Okay. So, calculating force of impact, you could see there's this guy wearing a bathrobe, looks like he's jumped off of some sort of a ledge. That's me. So you can see these are all sorts of EDpuzzle lessons which other people have created, which you can use. So if I hover over here, you can see I have my option to, oops, I did not mean to do that. Okay, I have my option to copy or use it, okay? So copy just makes a direct copy. I suggest that you instead click on use it. It will open up an EDpuzzle lesson. So this is a lesson that the students are assigned and they have to watch, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. So the first thing you can do with any one of these videos is you can crop it. So you could take and you can adjust these sliders over here. If there's a particular portion of the video that you don't want in there, or you don't like the fact that I put the gag reel at the end, or whatever you want to do, you can cut out pieces of the video. You can also do something where you have an audio track, and it's going to start playing, sorry. You can do an audio track where you can just completely cover over the audio of the video that you're looking at. I can see various reasons to do this. I have a couple of videos where it's just pure demonstrations, and maybe you just want to talk over a demonstration that some other teacher has done. You can also do this. I definitely suggest that you do this, which is audio notes. So in audio notes, what this is you can pause the video, and when the students are watching it, it will be paused, and you can record something for the students to hear. So you can pause it and record something like, I think what he's done is really great here, but I would probably approach it this way, or this is slightly different than the way we've done it. Note, we've done it this way in our classroom, or pay close attention to this. But this is a great way to take somebody else's video and just put a small piece of you into that video so that you are, your students are seeing you as well. Okay, but the main thing I want to talk about is quizzes. Okay, EDpuzzle quizzes. So we're going to walk through the EDpuzzle quizzes which this teacher has created. So you can see this first one is just a dialog box. It says, please follow along with practice problem in your notes, pause the video as you need. So you can see that this teacher has actually created a piece of paper to go along with the EDpuzzle lesson so that people can follow along, so that your students can follow along. Okay. The next one says, what is change in momentum equal to? So here, students, it will pause the video and it will force the students to answer this question. What is change in momentum equal to? Now, if you were taking this video and you wanted to make this EDpuzzle lesson your own, you can come over here and you can click edit, right? So what they've done is a short answer question, but you could instead make it into, I wish this would work better, make it into a multiple choice question. And you can give feedback. You can add feedback. If a student answers a question and they get it right, you could talk about why. If they get it wrong, you could talk about why they got it wrong or something of that sort. And you can also do just the bubble where it just tells them information. I recommend using actually the multiple choice more often. It's a lot easier as a teacher to see how students are doing when you use the multiple choice. I use a few of these short answer questions simply because they are, from a teacher perspective, harder to look through everybody's answers. Okay, so here's another question. They've added, what is momentum equal to? Now, I do want to point out that all of these EDpuzzle questions that they're asking have already been answered in the video. And this is one of the great pieces about EDpuzzle, is that it is a tool to actually help the students learn, because it takes the information and forces them to go through that information in their head again. So the answer's already been discussed. You're just looking to make sure that they are following along and understanding what they're doing. Here, this is a note from a teacher who's saying, okay, we haven't learned the conservation mechanical energy equations yet, so I solved this using conservation mechanical energy, but you could solve it using the free fall equations instead. So this is a note from a teacher saying that that in class they do it slightly differently. And then here's just another, what does the negative sign indicate? Okay. So now let's say you are done with your EDpuzzle lesson. You click on finish and you assign it to a class. So I would assign it to both of my classes. And I always enable prevent skipping. What this does is it makes it so that as they're watching, they have to watch the whole video. They can't skip forward through the video. Once they've watched part of the video, they can go back and rewatch part of the video, but by choosing prevent skipping, you are preventing them from being able to skip forward in the video. And then, of course, the due date, you can assign a due date and time. And I'll talk about specifically how I assign my due dates and times in just a little bit. So I'm not gonna assign this now because I don't wanna do that. Okay. So back to my content. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I am going to, there's a chat. I am going to, I want to talk about how to look at what the students have done, but because it's going to show, it would show student names, what I'm going to do now is switch from Safari to showing some screen captures that I did, and you'll see exactly why. So, so you can see this is the screen capture. I actually want to do this. The screen capture of what you see for the students. So you can see over here, this is why I'm doing screen captures, because I blurred out all of the names. I didn't think it would be fair to the students to show all their names. Okay, so again, you will not get 100% participation. You could see right here. I had one student who did not watch this video, would watch this EDpuzzle lesson. And you're just like any other homework, you're not going to get 100% participation. I do my best. I contact parents because the difference with this homework, EDpuzzle lesson homework, is that it's where the beginning of the learning happens. And they bring that learning into the classroom and you help them learn. So you just have to do your best to get them to do their homework. Okay, so now if you click on an individual student name, you can then see stuff about that student. All right, so this is one particular student. And you could see that, so somebody's got their mic on and I am no longer, there we go, thank you. So you can see that this student got 1 correct out of 2. And I'll talk about how I grade these in a little bit. You could see that they got velocity final 1 should be negative. They thought that was true and that was not correct. So you could see how every student has responded. In addition to that, you can, here I switched to another student. Here you could see how much of the video they watched and if they watched it more than 1 time. So you could see right here that this student, perhaps when it got to this question, they were like, well, I don't know what is the mistake in the problem. I don't know that. So they skipped back a little bit and tried to figure out what it was, and they ended up getting it correct. So does this work with LMS like Schoolology? It works with Google Classroom, and I believe they're working on making it work with Schoolology. You should check PlayPosit to see if it does. I know it works with Google Classroom, but it integrates with Google Classroom, but I don't know about Schoolology. Okay, so that's looking at individual students. You can also look at all of the questions, right? So here we have the questions. You could see what is the mistake in this problem. 11 out of 22 got it right. And which 2 variables are the same in this problem? You got 20 out of 22 that got that one correct. And now we can look at specific questions, okay? So if I click on the questions button, it will switch and show me the questions. So here you could see that, again, I've blurred out all the students, but at the bottom you could see exactly what student answered which question. And you can see here that the large percentage of the students understood what was going on and got this question correct, even though there were 2 correct answers to the question. And then there was this one. What is the mistake in the problem? You could see that roughly 50% of the students got it correct, and you could actually see, again, specifically which students did not get it correct. And I'll talk about how I deal with this in just a minute if 50% of the students get it incorrect. And so I will point out that with this particular question, I'm asking what is the mistake in the problem, and in just a minute in the video, we actually go through exactly what the mistake was, so they do understand shortly after this. Okay, so I want to get back to the PowerPoint presentation. Where is it? Okay, so we're back to talking about EDpuzzle. So the question is, how do I use EDpuzzle? And yes, there should be a question mark on there, I'm sorry. Okay, so here's how I use EDpuzzle. The EDpuzzle lessons are due by 7 a.m. School starts at 7:45, and so I get to school at 7 a.m. and I log into EDpuzzle and I look through what their progress is, right? So I could see exactly who understood what. And so then I will usually start class by going over, as a whole class, the questions that many students did not understand. So just imagine being able to enter into the classroom. I'll talk about how long the classes are in just a minute. Thank you for asking. So imagine being able to start class and know who understood what. Like it is a paradigm shift. It is so helpful. And so at the beginning of the class, I'll go over what many students did not understand. And I've learned that this is a good starting point. It used to be that I had to struggle a lot more to get students to ask questions. But now that they've already asked their questions and gotten stuff wrong in EDpuzzle, because I'll put sometimes what are your questions about the EDpuzzle lesson. So they've already asked questions. So they come into the class already having asked questions, and it somehow makes them feel more comfortable progressing with that and asking questions in the class. And it's so helpful. Okay, So then during the class, during whatever activity is happening, I'll meet individually with students who may have struggled with any particular Edpuzzle lesson. And so this is great, again, because you come into the class knowing if there's an individual who just had no idea what was going on. So it's important, I realized this a bit after a month or two, that I grade my Edpuzzle lessons for completeness only. It's important that they feel comfortable getting it wrong, right? The whole point in the Edpuzzle lessons is for them to start learning the information. And if you're grading it, and if they lose points by getting it wrong, I think that sets up a bad precedent. So I think instead, I always have it graded for completeness only. And again, this means that students are more free to answer the questions the way they want to. And every once in a while, I run into a student who, for whatever reason, gets a whole bunch wrong in a row, and then I sit down and have a conversation with them about why that is. All right. Okay, and another important piece I learned is that students, I don't actually accept late work. I mean, like, I don't accept late work. There's penalties, et cetera. But I accept Edpuzzle lessons for half credit always, because the Edpuzzle lessons are so important that they've got to learn this stuff. So it's a different type of assignment. So I definitely make sure that the Edpuzzle lessons, they can always turn those in. I feel like I don't need to pause for questions. I put this in here just in case. Oh, did you say elicit student feedback about the videos prior to class? What they feel they didn't understand? So yes. So often what I will do is, okay, so the question is, do I elicit questions from students before class? So I have embedded those into Edpuzzle, where I will maybe at the last lesson of that particular set of lessons, I will put in, do you have any questions about these lessons, so that I can answer them at the beginning of class. That's a really helpful tool to put into the Edpuzzle lessons. All right, I'm gonna keep going. The chat keeps getting in the way. It's a bummer. Okay, here we go. I want to come back to why flip. So as you guys talked about this. We talked about, I'll talk about, so I just got a question, how long is a typical Edpuzzle lesson? I have my statistics on that. And so I'll get to that in a minute. And somebody asked, what if a student does not have internet access? Okay, I will answer this question. I've been flipping my classes since 2013. And just a second, I'll get to that question. Since 2013, and I have yet to have a student who has not had internet access. I'm always prepared at the beginning of the school year. You have to approach it differently. Perhaps the school they can be in, perhaps the school has a library that the student can be at during lunch or after school or before school, but really, I've never had an issue with it. So somebody's asking, how many videos do you assign per night? I'll get to that. How are your Edpuzzles available to copy or use? Yes, I'll get to that, and the answer is yes. Can we change? That's not me. Okay, so it's student-driven. We've talked about this. It has more student-teacher interaction. Somebody asked, how early do you post the homework? Great question. I'll get to that. I have a whole thing about the homework. Okay, we've already talked about more student-teacher interaction. I don't want to do that. So I do want to talk about how it's flexible. So it really changed the way assignments were assigned and when they were due when I flipped my classes. Because just to give an example, like when I do labs, traditionally in a traditional classroom, I'm going to pause for a second. If you ask a question and I tell you I'm going to talk about it and you feel like I didn't talk about it when I get to a point where you think I did, just ask the question again, please. But I'm going to talk about homework in a bit and how I use Edpuzzle and specifically numbers and things like that. Okay. So in a traditional classroom, when I flipped my labs, we would collect data in class, and then some students would have like 15 minutes, 10 minutes at the end of class to start to analyze the data, and then they would go home, and then they would have to analyze the data, and then they'd come back, and it would be due at the beginning of the next class. So what would happen is students would, what I like to say, spin their wheels at home. They'd get to a point where they couldn't
they couldn't, like, they'd be spinning the wheels. They couldn't answer the questions. So they couldn't get any further in the lab. So in a flipped classroom, what I've done with labs is we collect the data on the lab, and then the students start analyzing the data, and then they come back the next day, and we have a full class period to analyze the data. And I've found that the students spend a lot less time on the labs because they spend less time spinning their wheels. They get stuck, and I'm right there to answer the questions, which is the whole reason I flip my classes. So what happens then is that the lab is no longer due at the beginning of class. The lab is due by the end of class. And notice it's not due at, but rather by. So what happens is that you have students who finish earlier than other students. So you need to be prepared for what those students are going to do next. So I'll get to that in a second. So you need to be prepared for what those students are going to do next. And so a lot of times you'll have overlapping of what students are doing at one particular point in time. So it's a very different way of looking at teaching. It's no longer every student is doing the same thing at the same time. If one student gets done, they turn it in and they start the next thing. Okay. So let's get to my flipped learning suggestions. If you're going to flip your whole class, if you're going to just flip a couple of lessons, I don't think you need to do this. But if you're going to flip your whole class, I do suggest that you inform everyone to help them get on board, the students, the parents, the administrators. And I have a letter that I hand out at the beginning of the year, which I will share with you. I'll put on that webpage after I'm done. And by the way, you gave me all your email addresses, so I will email you after I update that webpage. So you've got to get everyone on board because this is a very different way of approaching teaching. It facilitates more student interaction, and the students have more onus to do the work. And so there's more, it's just a very different way of teaching. Oh, dang it, sorry. So you need to teach your students how to learn from a flipping educational video. And I have a video, which I share with my students, which I will share with you. So if you don't teach students how to learn from an educational video, they'll watch the video literally like this. And they'll be like, okay. So you need to teach them how to learn from videos. They are so used to just watching and checking out as they watch videos. And this is a very different way of learning from videos. Okay. One of the deals I made with my students when I flipped their learning was that I would not add work for the students. This is not a tool to make it so that you can do more. Please don't use it that way. You don't want to make your students do more. Anytime I add something to my class now, I make sure to remove something from the class. Do not add more work for the students. And I suggest that you assign no more than 15 minutes of EDpuzzle lesson homework per school day. I'll talk about where those statistics come from and what specifically I use. So I teach on a block schedule, which is, got to move the chat window, which is 100-minute classes. And so I actually assign no more than 30 minutes per day, but I'm assuming that you teach in a standard 55-minute traditional class meeting every day. But my classes meet essentially every other day for 100-minute classes. So I get this question like all the time, how much do I assign? So I actually sat down and figured out what I assigned first semester of this school year, and it is this, my data from first semester. I assigned 71 mandatory videos. 71. The average length of my EDpuzzle lesson videos is 7 minutes. The number of 55-minute class periods equivalent in my school for first semester was 83, which means the average video homework was roughly 6 minutes. And most of their homework, I'd say 75% of their homework is the EDpuzzle lessons, okay? So on average, I assigned 6 minutes of video homework. And I also had 41 optional videos for students who wanted more information. So kind of taking and maybe redoing something or taking it and going a slightly different direction just so that they can review a little bit. So that's what I did. And again, I suggest if you do a 55-minute class, that you do roughly no more than 15 minutes a day. And I realized I missed a question, so I'm going to go back to that real quick, which is going back to Safari. So the question was, do I provide my EDpuzzle lessons? So we are back at, okay, so this is my website, okay? And you can see these are a whole bunch of videos that I have that I've created. And you can see next to each and every one of these videos is an EDpuzzle lesson link. And if you click on this link, it will open up the EDpuzzle, and you can then take this EDpuzzle and you can use it, make it your own. You could take my questions and you could change them. You can do whatever you'd like to. But I have given you the framework to use to create an EDpuzzle lesson for every single one of my videos. Please use them. This is why I make the videos, so that you guys can use them and share them with your students. And I can help you be able to spend more time with your students via a flipped learning environment. Okay, so I want to get back to, hold up just a second. It's trying to switch to the PowerPoint. There we go. Okay, so we're back to the PowerPoint. So that's my statistics. Thank you. Somebody said I rock. Deb, thank you. Thanks. Okay. So back to my flipped learning suggestions. So other than EDpuzzle lessons, have most assignments due by the end of class. I was actually thinking about it. Other than projects, I actually don't have anything that's due at the beginning of class. Some projects I have due at the beginning of class, but really most of my assignments are due by the end of class. So I think I talked about this a little bit, but you need to expect some students to be starting the next assignment before others have completed the current assignment. So this is something you actually have to be prepared for. It makes it a lot more fun and interesting, but you have to be prepared for it. It's funny, after I flipped my first year, the feedback from students was actually that they missed lecture. I didn't lecture almost at all that first year when I flipped my classes, or that first semester. And it was really interesting that the student feedback was that they really wanted a little bit of lecture. They missed that interaction. So I took it back a little bit, and I do now lecture just a little bit. I have some specific lectures that I do for specific reasons, and I bet you will too. Okay, so make homework expectations other than EDpuzzle lessons very clear. I just got a question. I'll get to that in a second. So what I mean by this is, so let's say we finish collecting the data from a lab, and the lab is going to be due by the end of next class period. So what I will do at the end of the class period is I will say, okay, you need to make sure that you are to this point in the lab so that you have enough time to finish the lab in class tomorrow. And what's interesting about this is this changes from class period to class period, year to year. So because of various circumstances. So you need to make your homework expectations other than EDpuzzle lessons very, very clear. Clearly, you need to make the EDpuzzle lessons very clear as well. Speaking of, so I'm going to answer two questions. One is, have you noticed any difference in engagement between boys/girls with the flipped classroom? So you mean by gender? I can't answer that. I have not noticed a difference. I don't have any feedback on that. Let me get to the first students who do not do the homework. Okay, so another question I got was, when do you assign the EDpuzzle lessons? So this is one of the great pieces about a flipped learning class, is I actually make sure that all of my EDpuzzle lessons are assigned at least, I'll use the term fortnight. I love that word. Sorry, fortnight, 2 weeks. At least 2 weeks before they're due. And this gives the students a little bit of flexibility about when they do particular assignments. Plus, the flipped learning environment is awesome for students who have to miss class. I will tell you, it is awesome because they can get all of those lectures that they would have missed at home. Really awesome. Okay, I have a question for students who do not do the homework. What do they do in class the next day? From my experience, the best thing for them to do is to struggle in class. And I know that seems a little bit harsh, but that's the reality, is that if they learn that you are not going to teach it to them and that they are going to have to do it or they are going to struggle in class, then that's what you got to do. So really, you cannot do it for them. So they struggle, they work with everybody else and they do their best, but they learn that if they don't do their homework, they're really going to struggle. So what other kinds of homework do you give in addition to EDpuzzle lessons? So I really don't give much homework other than EDpuzzle lessons. So the only homework that I would assign that would be in addition to EDpuzzle lessons would be something that we've started in class that they need to perhaps do a little bit more work on in order to finish it in class. So I try not to assign specifically any other homework, but it may be that they need more time to work on something. So I have a question, with a 2-week lead time, when do they actually watch the videos? Within 12 hours of when it's due, really. But I always have 1 or 2 kids who watch it like a week in advance or 10 days in advance. But the vast majority of them watch them 12 hours, maybe 24 hours, but 50% of them get it done. Within the last 12 hours. In fact, you'd be amazed at the number that do it like at 6 a.m. when it's due at 7. Can you talk about non-lab class activities? So non-lab class activities, sure. So for example, worksheets. So again, I will have worksheets that are assigned at the beginning of the class and maybe due by the end of the class, or maybe it's something that we start in class and then they have some time at home and then they come back and finish it in class. I have optional practice problems, which I'll talk about in just a minute. We have projects, of course, where again, we work on it in class, but they also work on it at home and they work on it in class. And I do peer instruction by Eric Mazer. I found that that's really, really useful. Well, I'm running out of time, aren't I? Okay, so I use peer instruction, and that's something we all do together. Do I use modeling physics? I do not use modeling physics. I think I need to move on. Okay. Oh, so I have an ongoing optional assignment, and this is something that I suggest that you do. So I have an optional practice problem assignment, which is due by the end of the semester, and the solutions are posted online. So these are a bunch of problems which help reinforce the topics of the class, and it is optional. And I post all the solutions online. So the students, they can do these practice problems. Note they're not bookwork problems or homework problems, they're practice problems because they might do them at home and they might do them in class. Sometimes I provide time in class to work on the practice problems because there's a particular piece that I think that they need to work on. And what this does, making it optional, means that students can do it if they feel like they need the extra work, maybe on a specific section, or they cannot do it. And by posting the solutions online, the students get immediate feedback as to whether they've done it right or not. Nothing bothered me more when I was a student. Well, there were a lot of things, but one thing that bothered me a lot when I was a student was when I would work on homework and not know if I'm doing it right. So what this does for you is it gives you a little bit of flexibility for assignments that the students can be working on if, for example, one student has finished one student's finished and the rest of the class is lagging behind, you can have them work on the practice problems, just as a suggestion. So this is important. Somebody just asked full worked out solution or just answer posted. No, I put all of the solutions and I make it very clear to the students that if I just posted the answer, that would be almost useless. So they are my handwritten, half the time, solutions. And yes, you could tell me that a student could go there and copy everything down. And yes, and I've had it happen from time to time. And the truth is they're going to learn a little bit from that. And the amount of gain from posting the full solutions far exceeds any risk from having students just copy it, as far as I'm concerned. And it gets rid of a problem of plagiarism as well. Okay, so I got a couple questions. So do they actually do the practice problems without credit or extra credit? So to be clear, when I say optional, it is a graded assignment. And how it works is if they turn it in at the end of the school year, I grade based on total points. So that becomes another assignment, which is worth a certain amount of points. So the total number of points in the class goes up. and their final exam is then worth a smaller percentage of the whole. So yes, I do get students who do it, and it's not for extra credit, but it's an extra assignment, and it makes the final exam worth slightly less percentage-wise. And they know they have it right because they have all the solutions. Do you put solutions on EDpuzzle questions under the feedback option? No, that would be too cumbersome to put the solutions on the EDpuzzle questions under the feedback option. I do not do that. So I talked about the extra credit or bonus they get for optional problems. I know I have 3 minutes left. Thank you. Okay, so here we go. Let's see what else. I'm not going to pause for questions. We've been doing questions throughout. That's awesome. So I just want to give some feedback from students about the flipped learning, which was, so I gave this question to my students at the end of this year, and I'm sharing a couple of responses, which was, I enjoyed the videos and the flipped philosophy. It taught me independence and helped my learning. That's from a student. And I do want to point out that even I get resistance at the beginning of the school year from some students when I tell them we're going to flip the class. It's to be expected. Again, you are changing the way they're learning, and it's very different, and people do not do well with change often. Another feedback from a student. I enjoyed the light and free learning environment because it made it easy to learn. It was easy because everyone was learning together, and I was never worried about guessing the wrong answer, which is exactly what you want. This is what I talk about in the flipped learning environment. You are creating a more cooperative learning environment, and it's student-driven, and they are much more comfortable being wrong, which is such an important piece of learning. People underestimate that. You've got to get stuff wrong in order to learn. One more, I enjoyed the flipped style classroom. Watching videos and taking notes was a really nice way to learn concepts and then solidify them in class the next day. The videos were really cool and helpful. Whew. Okay, so one of the things that I talked about was, the main thing I talked about was taking other people's videos and making them your own via EDpuzzle, which is definitely the way I suggest that you go. I do have some videos about how to make your own flipping videos. I have the basics of making educational, engaging flipping videos. I have 9 do's for making engaging flipping videos, and I have 8 don'ts for making engaging flipping videos. But again, I do suggest that you use my videos, use other people's videos before you start to try to use your own. I believe we have 1 minute left. I'll pause. I'll say thank you. I have a couple more things I was going to talk about, but I think we're good. If you have any real questions, any more questions, feel free. You are welcome. You are welcome, everybody. Thank you. Thanks. I'm glad it was helpful. Thank you, everybody. These are awesome comments. Where would you most like? Who are you most like, Billy, Bobby, or Bo? So to the answer to the question, I'm glad, Deb, that you are excited. Billy, Bobby, and Bo, I am all 3. So basically, we've taken my personality and split it into 3 pieces. I am Billy. I love to be Billy. I mean, it's so much fun. And Bo, I mean, everybody's Bo at some point. So I only had a couple more things to talk about, just some specific questions. Maybe there are a couple of little things. I'll put them on the webpage, just a little bit there that I didn't get to talk about. Oh, you are welcome. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. This was magnificent. I like to say to die for. And thank you very much for our participants. I think we just broke a record with these webinars. We had a total of 72 participants throughout the session. And I am sure that we will have another invitation for Jonathan in the near future. And just a reminder that this session is going to be recorded, so you will be able to watch it again for any sections that you want to revisit on the AAPT website. Thank you very much, and have a good night.
Thank you, Penny. That's awesome.
Thank you very much, Jonathan.
Thanks. Sorry, I'm trying to slow down a little bit, I guess.
This was fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Dolores. It was fun. As I said before, like I get to talk about what I do, and I love what I do. So it's fun to talk about.
Excellent.
So thanks for inviting me.